Welcome back to our Summer STEM series where we're talking about theater, arts, and tech, and we're using puppets to tell your story. If you missed it, our first episode was all about making puppets and building our cast of characters. Think of it as the kind of easing into the technical aspects of theater. If you want to pause and go watch it now, you can do that, or you can just go back to it later. Our goal for this series is to create a whole puppet theater production by the end of the series, so stay tuned to this playlist for details on how that's all going to roll out. But for now, buckle on those hard hats because we're getting into theater construction. You might remember my abbreviated list of theater elements from last video. That is performers, audience, space, design aspects, and direction. So this week it's all about space, but not this space, theater space. We're going to start thinking about where your story is going to take place. So is it going to be a modern setting with characters that are like you and your friends, or is it going to be more of a fantasy setting, sci-fi setting, where you can just really create some cool backdrops and sets and everything like that? When you know what kind of environment you're aiming for, then that'll kind of inform what sort of stage you're going to build. So what kind of stages are there? Glad you asked. Get ready for the B-roll.
The first puppet stage that anyone is introduced to as a kid is the back of the sofa or a table. It's not very fancy, but we'll just call it the black box of puppetry. This would work particularly well if your cast of characters is your family or friends or anyone else who lives in the real world. Another simple type of puppet theater or puppet stage is the doorway stage. Basically, you just create it by putting a tension rod or a baby gate in a doorway, drape it with a sheet. This leaves you a lot of backstage room to switch out puppets and prepare props. Some can get very fancy with curtains or cutout window. Mine is not. But what if you want something fancier? Well, then it's time to start looking at parts of a stage. Okay, well, there are a lot of parts of a stage in full theater productions. I'm talking curtains upon curtains, rolling sets, rakes, rises, cycloramas, legs, borders, wings, a whole menagerie of stage components, really. Again, I'm going to walk it back to basics and adapt it for puppetry. First, you'll need a playboard. That is basically the stage itself. Since your puppets don't actually have to stand on anything, this doesn't have to be extensive, but it's useful for holding sets and props and gives a sense of dimension to the show. Next, you might want a backdrop. In large theater productions, the backdrop is often a painted piece of canvas depicting scenery. Obviously, actors can't interact with the backdrop, so its function is to set the mood and inform the audience of the scene. If you are using hand or stick puppets, your backdrop can be a picture you drew or even a painting you have that's hung or propped on the wall behind your stage. If you're using a marionette, you will want to be able to stand behind your backdrop, leaning over it to work your puppet. You might also want to build some wings in your puppet stage. These are curtains or pieces of scenery to the sides of the stage that can hide a puppet or props until they are brought onto the stage. That is literally what waiting in the wings means. The more you know. These can be fashioned out of cardboard, or if you're performing in a doorway theater, they're already built in. Just move a puppet behind the door jamb and you have an exit. Done. You might also want to add some sets to your stage. That's just movable props like furniture or trees that help set the scene. Historically, puppet theaters were made to look just like tiny replicas of big stages. So they could be a tall box or booth that obscured the puppeteers completely and had a playboard, backdrop, curtains, and sometimes even doors that could open and close to reveal the stage to the audience. They could get very fancy. If you want to create a puppet booth, you can do so with a large cardboard box. Even if it's not big enough for you to sit in, try setting it on a table, like this. If you only have a small box, that's okay. It'll still work really well for stick puppets. The flaps can be your doors, and you can even hang fabric curtains on the front of the box. The bottom now becomes where you hang the backdrop, and you can just cut a hole in the base of the theater where you can bring puppets on stage. Don't worry if you don't have fancy materials. I did a pretty cool minimalist stage here, with just silhouettes of a mountain and some trees. I might paint it later.
So I don't know, are you ready to build your own puppet stage? Try a couple to see what sort you like. And as always, subscribe to this channel to get more content and click that bell for updates. See ya!